Apple expected to unveil several new products at its launch event later today. They're looking for a new lineup of iPhones. We could also see a new Apple Watch and get details about Apple's push into services. Joining us right now to talk about what investors should expect is Daniel Flax. He is senior research analyst at Neuberger Berman. It's great to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Great to be here. Thank you, Becky.
How big of a deal is this? Because usually this product unveil is the biggest deal that they have going for them. But as the company is changing, does it still have the same level of import?
Becky, I think it's a piece of what's a much bigger story. Clearly, the iPhone, in terms of the product and its importance to the customer base, is critical, and I think we'll see some improvements to the device. I think for the iPhone business, what's important is that the installed base is continuing to grow. User satisfaction is high. And while the smartphone market has been soft overall, and Apple is certainly not immune from that, I think what's important and what enables the company to differentiate ultimately is this integration of hardware, software, and services, and they do it in a fun, easy, and secure way, which really delights their customers.
These phones, though, are seen as not necessarily being huge game changers. New phone, which I'm all in favor of, maybe a little longer on the water resistance, which is fantastic. But people are kind of looking to next year, the end of next year, when they think they're going to be getting a 5G phone. So what does that mean for this launch and for these potential sales?
I think for the current launch and the potential sales as we look out over the next several months, the additional camera will be important for some people. Obviously, you'll have faster speeds for the device. You could have improvements to Face ID, which is important.
Face ID, so that it can open up even if it's sitting on the table. And
correct. I mean, there'll be other improvements to it. Now, but I take your point in that it's viewed as incremental.
I mean, I think the new camera is really cool. You can get wide angle, an additional camera that's going to be on it. That actually is something that would make me potentially get into it.
So I think that's key. I mean, as you say, for your own user experience, it's important. But if you think about what's happening in terms of the cameras and the 3D sensing capabilities, this is really changing how people work, how they play, how they live, how they socialize. And because you have new technologies like augmented reality, none of us are teens here, but in terms of how teens communicate today, a lot of it is with various images imposed on themselves. If we think about the workplace, the ability to superimpose, if you're repairing an engine and you're able to have 3D images imposed on what you're doing, you can do your job more effectively. If you're shopping, you can have items superimposed into a room to see how they may look in your home or your workplace. And so I think that experience with the camera, with the 3D sensing, really integrating the technology more seamlessly into our lives is ultimately making the phone more important to you. So yes, the 5G phone is...
How much of this do we already know, and is there anything that they could say today that's actually a game changer for the stock?
Unlikely to be anything dramatic, but of course we'll have to see. Tim Cook and company are working on a bunch of things we may not see that may not see the light of day today. Your point, though, on the 5G device, which could come towards the end of next year, I think that's important in that the 5G networks are being built, and clearly there's a lot of focus because the impact from 5G is a lot more significant than just the devices. This is really about the Internet of Things connecting all sorts of devices, not just traditional phones, to the Internet. But ultimately for Apple, the key for this cycle and for 5G and beyond, it's about differentiating that user experience, keeping the customers happy, and that will enable them to both buy new devices and ultimately, as we're seeing, consume more services, which is important to the story.
Danny, we were just looking at a chart of the Apple share price. This is about the fourth trip this year the stock has made, just above $210 a share. You see that right there. Is there anything that you think either kind of holds it back around these levels, or is it the valuation gets a little bit full, or do you feel like, investors just waiting for the next sort of trigger to get more aggressive?
I think, Mike, it comes down to the innovation and whether people are going to be able to get more of a glimpse into the future. And we've talked about the phone, which is clearly important, but I think a much bigger part of the story that isn't getting enough attention are the wearables. So we're likely to have a new watch today. The AirPods, they can't keep up with the demand. And besides the device being differentiated and being cool and being hip, people are able to get utility in new areas. So, for example, the ECG or the electrocardiogram app on the watch. That's helping to save lives. And so there's a lot that they can do in healthcare. And I think there are other areas, for example, monitoring sleep. And so I would expect, Mike, we'll see a little bit of a glimpse into what's coming, and that ultimately is what can get people excited. But to be clear, they have to create value for their customers, for the broader ecosystem, and that ultimately is what we think will translate into shareholder value.